Hello and welcome to the latest in Real Stories. This is our bite-sized format of Do More with Less. We're obviously twinning our monthly Do More with Less interviews with shorter, punchier sessions, still with marketing leaders, that highlight on-the-ground stories of individuals having to fight to work out how to do more with less. Today we've got a very, very cool story. I'm talking to Greg Landon, currently in Krakow, Poland, who in the past year has had the unenviable task, perhaps, of integrating two very separate marketing functions. Now VP of Marketing at SALESmanago. SALESmanago took over, acquired Lido, a year ago, Greg? Hi, how are you?
Exactly a year ago as we were recording this to the week. It's been a hell of a year. Some good, some not so good. But in terms of a learning experience and in terms of packing things into a year that it would otherwise take you 10 or 15 to learn, it's been pretty unbelievable.
Well, let's go there. Let's go there quickly. Like how, I guess in our Do More with Less community, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of marketers that are struggling to integrate functions, products, messaging, cultures, people, ways of working. How experienced were you when I know you were 2 years in at Lido, and you can tell us a little bit about that. That was a Scandinavian company based out of, I think, Finland, you said. How many years experience at leading marketing teams had you had when the acquisition came in?
Yeah, so this will be, for some people hearing this will be strange. I'd only worked there for a couple of years before the acquisition. So I had been at Lido for about 2 years pre-acquisition, just under. My background is in agencies. So Lido, this kind of adds to it, was my first big in-house job.
Right.
So I spent more than a decade in all different kinds of marketing agencies, started on more of the PR side of things, and then transitioned over to more quite technical digital agencies. But Lido, I came in as a head of marketing, and that was my first, what I'd say, big in-house marketing role. And then, within 2 years of coming on board, company had been acquired. And actually, after that acquisition, a lot of our original founders stepped away, exited, which was kind of part of their roadmap after that acquisition. And so, I was left in a situation where I'd only been there a couple of years, working out of the UK, which was at the time the growth market and the focus of where the business wanted to acquire new customers. But yeah, working for this Finnish business based in the UK, working remotely. Only been there 2 years, and then, overnight I was one of the more senior people left at that business that had been acquired.
So how big was Lido when you were acquired?
So we were about 7 million ARR turnover and about 50, 60 people across Europe.
Okay. You talk about that only 2 years. You've said it a couple of times, like you were still very comfortable with the idea of learning the business, growing in your job, developing the kind of understanding of what it means to be an in-house marketer, so that you were still on a journey when that happened. Do you remember the day that you first heard, whether it was whispers or confirmation that the acquisition was happening? Do you remember how you took the news, how you responded?
Yeah, I think it wasn't a kind of a shocking moment, in the sense that just from having gone through the interviews and having met the founders and worked with them for a bit, I did get the sense, particularly because some of them had other businesses as well, that, there was always going to be a date eventually where they were going to exit at some point. And so it wasn't shocking to me to hear that, we had a potential buyer lined up. But I think when I did hear that, obviously your mind thinks about, well, what am I going to do? And where is this going to leave me? And I think for me, it was a sobering thought to think that because I didn't know at the time that, a lot of those founders were going to step away in a short space of time after that acquisition. It does leave you with a bit of a sobering thought of like, God, how am I going to be the guy? I've been here 2 years. I'm still bedding in many ways.
How soon did you realize, did it strike you that, or did you sort of understand that you were going to be probably the senior Lido guy that was going to end up seeing the acquisition through and then starting to meld two functions? How did you figure out that it was going to be on you?
Yeah, that kind of happened some months after the acquisition, I would say. When the acquisition went through, our founders, there was a transition period. They stayed on for several months, a few of them. And very much after the acquisition, the initial thought was, because Lido was on a growth trajectory, it was growing year on year. And so the acquiring company, SALESmanago, didn't want to mess that up. So initially for the first few months, Lido was run very independently. It was run as kind of a separate business unit. And then kind of around the time that a couple of our founders stepped away after that, there was a big concerted push to kind of integrate the two businesses as much as possible.
Does the Lido brand still exist?
Yes, it does. Yes.
And so
and it will for the foreseeable future.
Fine. So a year in, you've been what? What's your mission been? You've got 12 months from the moment that that journey starts for you. What did you hope to get done in this first 12 months? Because we spoke before we started recording, and you said to a certain extent there's been a lot of work done, a lot of legwork done. Some of it's been quite difficult, but you're still not necessarily at the stage where you've got everything covered off. You're still looking very much at how that things fit together, different products, different messaging. Yep. What's been the mission so far?
So I would say, well, from a selfish point of view, when the acquisition immediately happened, what my main mission was, I want to look after Lido. I want to look after this brand that we've helped build. I want to look after the people in my team from Lido. I want to make sure that they have jobs in this new group future, however that ends up looking like. And I think we did all of that quite successfully. And then sort of in the last 6 months or so, my role has been moved very much onto a group focus. So kind of looking at some of the results, and particularly the kind of ROI that we were able to achieve on our marketing and our wider GTM function at Lido. That's pretty good solid numbers for the group. And they've asked me to step into much more of a group capacity role now. So I am trying to replicate some of that success and those best practices on the SALESmanago side of things.
What were the marketing numbers headcount wise before with the two groups, the two companies, and what is it now?
Yeah. So at Lido, we had pre-acquisition, we had 4 in our marketing and data team because we had those two functions together. And the SALESmanago side, I believe at the time of the acquisition, there was 10 in the marketing team. And right now the number is, it's the same size, but the resourcing has been mixed and split. So we've actually got exactly 14 across both at the minute.
And do they work separately still, the marketing teams?
No. So this has been something that we've had to work quite a lot on. We've had to integrate the two teams together. Not everyone spends equal time on both. We have people who focus on different businesses at different times as required. However, for the people in the team with clear specialisms, so for example, we have someone in our team whose job it is to specialize in paid adverts. They are doing paid adverts across the group. Ditto for someone in our data team who sits within marketing. They are now working in terms of the wider RevOps team across the group. And the other thing that slightly complicates this is that just 3 months ago, as we record this, there was another acquisition made by SALESmanago of a different Polish business. So they've come into the mix now, but just to kind of ease that level of disruption, which has happened within a year, they are being run very much as their own independent business unit, but they have a very, very small marketing team. And so we also have to devote a little bit of resource to their side of things as well.
Okay. Tell me how you feel about consolidation. What do you know now? What do you feel now that you had no idea about as a brand new 2-year in head of marketing? There's going to be a lot of consolidation in the market. We're all facing it. How do you feel about it?
I would say it's been extremely challenging at times.
Yeah.
But the one thing I do say to people is the last job that I had before I became a head of marketing at Lido, part of the reason I left that job was because my day-to-day had become a bit boring. I'd kind of reached a bit of a ceiling in terms of what I could achieve, and I wanted a new challenge. And honestly, there were days where I felt a bit bored. And, careful what you wish for, because I've been here almost 3 years now and I haven't been bored one day. So for me, it's part of the challenge that I enjoy. At the time of life that I'm in, it's been good to me. But yes, I think it would be impossible to be acquired or go through a big merger process like we've been through without pain, without it affecting your team, without potentially losing people along the way. And so as much as it's, necessary or something that you might not be able to control as a function head or as a marketing leader, I think it's something that you have to lean into. And if you do, it can be incredibly gratifying to have seen people through a transition like that.
Coming from an agency background and having also witnessed for myself some of your talks and your outreach to market on videos and events, you're a very human leader. You put a lot of stock in treating people right, looking after team, the way you carry yourself. What has been the hardest part, or the part that you're perhaps most proud of that you've achieved in this past 12 months? So what have you found out about yourself?
So for me, the most gratifying part of it is individual stories. So I'll give you one, and I don't want to pick favorites, amongst our team, but at Lido for several years, Lido had worked with a freelance graphic designer. I think originally, this is before my time, but I think originally joined Lido or Fiverr, or like one of these kind of sites. And he'd been doing graphic design for Lido for years, but purely in like a freelance capacity. And amazingly talented guy from the Ukraine, or had always been based in the Ukraine. And obviously the full-scale invasion, the war broke out a few years ago. He's a guy, he's of mobilization eligible age. So he was physically not able to leave the Ukraine. And even through all of that, for me at Lido, producing the most unbelievably creative graphics work, videos, still graphics, everything that you could ask for, and doing it in just the most horrendous conditions that those people have to live with. And before the acquisition, he had been asking me, Greg, is there any way I can get a full-time position at Lido? Because that will potentially give me an avenue to be able to leave the Ukraine and move. And I didn't have the budget for it at the time. Pre-acquisition, very lean marketing team. We didn't want to make new hires in the immediate run-up to the acquisition in those kind of roles. And so I wasn't able to get in that at the time. But as soon as the acquisition went through, sat down with him and they said, this is our chance now. And what we were able to do was get him doing graphics work, which there was a little bit of a resource gap for SALESmanago, get him working across the group, get him put his projects in front of as many people as possible, get him as much airtime as possible for the amazing work that he does. And lo and behold, 4 or 5 months after the acquisition, there was a business case to be made for bringing on a full-time graphic designer at SALESmanago. And we were able to get him that full-time role. And since then, he's been able to move, and he now lives in Poland, which is where SALESmanago are based.
Incredible.
So that is, whatever KPIs you hit, whatever you achieve from a marketing metrics or even a business growth point of view, like nothing will ever be as satisfying to me as stories like that. And being able to make that happen in a very turbulent, difficult time is, if you want to frame it this way, is only possible because of the turbulent, difficult time or the uncertain time that kind of acquisition or merger creates.
Got it. What a lovely story, and well done. Fabulous. I suppose one of my questions has to be, you came from agency land where things typically work pretty fast. You said you were bored, I get that, but or things were a little bit slow for you. But agency world, especially, you went from PR, you went through digital, so things work pretty fast. And when you joined Lido, it was very, very much a startup scenario. Right now, you've been working on integrating 2 firms for a year, and you're not there yet. So you're still carrying in your head what I can only assume is the exhausting division of focus and the exhausting uncertainty of how certain things are still going to play out. How's your mindset? You must be either incredibly patient and resilient, or just a different type of, does it take a certain type of person maybe to oversee an integration like this?
Maybe I don't know. Maybe I am just wired in a weird way. There is something about me that really likes the challenge and likes every day looking a little bit different.
Yeah.
I think if every day looked the same for me, one of the things that I used to really dislike about agency world, for instance, was having to fill in a timesheet and match that to a specific retainer and only being allowed to spend this much time on this much customer. There is a part of just who I am that does like a little bit of unpredictability and things changing and looking different. But to your wider question about are people uncertain? Are people afraid? Are people absolutely? People are people, and when you put people in an uncertain situation or a situation they're not used to, or now we have to mesh these two things together, and it's natural that people worry. And like I said, I think it's a very unfortunate part of acquisitions. But there are going to be people that decide this is not for them, and this is a time for them to move on, and that's unfortunate and that's horrible. But it's also potentially inevitable in some ways. And so,
how much of your job is to try and create an environment as far as possible of calm, of stability, of wherever you can find it, of reassurance and confidence?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, that is a big part of it. And I think the way that you can do that, even through something like this, where we're bringing these platforms together, we're bringing these different businesses together based in different countries. I think, part of, and this applies to almost anything in life, play to your strengths, find your strengths. So even if you've got this roadmap, which might not be super clear on how you're going to bring these things together, in the interim, let's control what we can control. Let's play to our strengths. Let's market in a way that we know works for both businesses, even if that looks a little bit different in the short term. Let's focus on the channels that we know work in each business. And again, those might be very different for Manago and Lidu, SALESmanago and Lidu, that we do have different channels that perform better on the new business side, on the lead gen side. And so even though you have maybe an overarching goal of we need to bring all this together, we need to integrate, we need to find synergy, we need to meet all the buzzwords, that can still be your long-term goal and things you work at in the background. But guys, let's find wins. Let's focus on what we're good at, what we can control, and let's get small wins in the short term. And if we can do that, we can feel good about the general direction of travel, even if we don't know exactly how it's going to play out.
I don't know a startup where a marketer or marketing head or leader feels that everything's perfect. And I think that there's an enormous amount of power in working with imperfection. And that could be a really good day or week's work that week, but I think you've got a tremendous lesson to teach anyone who's trying to do more with less, because the very act of a culture and an era and a blunt instruction to do more with less is destabilizing. It's really, really difficult. And the first thought or the first sensation is always a personally jarring one. The second thought is, how the hell am I going to make this work in terms of budgets, resource, goals, whatever? I just think it's, I think that you sound like you wouldn't call it heroic, but I think the last 12 months for you must have been a gentle progress made every day equals progress journey.
Yeah, firstly, thank you for saying that. That's far too kind of you. I don't view it as heroic. I view it as, I wanted to lead a marketing function, and you can say that these are crazy circumstances you found yourself in, and maybe they are. But what I wanted to do was lead a marketing function. And so that is part of the job. This situation, luck, destiny, call it whatever you want. This is where I found myself. And so, my job is to help lead it. The other thing I would say, to any marketer out there, like you said, marketers are having to work with imperfection all the time. They're having to cut costs all the time. They're having to answer to more and more difficult targets all the time. And I think one of the things that stuck with me, and a lot of people will hear this and freak out, but I actually find it incredibly comforting, is no one is coming to help. And sometimes when people hear that, they're like, oh my God, no one is coming. I can't deal with that. It's all on me. How am I going to do this? But the way I look at that is, if you're a marketing leader and you found yourself in a difficult situation like this, the only thing you can do is do your best. And whether you think it's right or wrong, you are the person who's in position to make it better, or to influence it, or to help, or to get it along, or just to steady the ship, or whatever your mission is. And when I say no one is coming to help, the reason I quite like that as a principle is because it just kind of brings me back to reality, and it makes me realize, Greg, whatever you think about the situation, this is your job. It's on you to work out what's the best thing, try and make the best decision, and try and see you and the team through it. So I know for a lot of people, they'll be like, Jesus, that's bleak. But for me, it's just an incredibly grounding thing to just keep whatever, whether you wake up in a terrible mood, or you've got no motivation, or you're like, oh, how the hell am I going to get through this to-do list, or how the hell am I going to hit this target this month? It's just for me, it's a grounding thing to say, it's on you. You're in this position. Just try your best, trust yourself. And if it does, even if it doesn't work out, even if you miss it completely, at least you can go to bed knowing that you tried your best. And
Greg, I've got one final question for you.
Yeah.
And this is something that will probably mean a lot to you. Take a snapshot today, right now, regardless of what is going on. Out of 10, broadly, with 10 being incredibly comfortable, happy, motivated, inspired and challenged, and 1 being on their last legs, how happy are your team today?
Wow. What a question. If I think across my team, across the whole group, 6.
How does that feel?
Quite tough to say out loud, because you want it to be high. And but look, I'm not naive. We've been through a period of enormous change in less than 12 months in this wider group. Now we've multiple acquisitions in that period. We sell in different geographies. We've had to bring teams remotely across Europe together as best we can. I think I'd be lying to myself if I said, 9, 10 out of 10. I think there's always, like I said, people are people. And if there's uncertainty, it's only natural for people to worry about that, particularly if they are more junior or starting out in their career. And so I think I'd be lying if I gave you a stupidly high number. But what I would say is I hope, and I believe, and I want to believe that that number is on the way up. Because the period of the highest uncertainty and the most difficulty is always the start. And over time, even if the situation is still fluid and there's lots of moving parts, familiarity breeds comfort for people. And so I'd like to think that immediately after the acquisition, that number probably is lower than it is today. And I definitely do believe that 6 months, 12 months from now, it will be higher than it is. But I'm not going to kid you. I'm not going to kid the audience. It would be almost impossible, I think, to go through this much change for a company of this size, because we're not Google, in this period of time, and have that number be 9 or 10 out of 10.
Greg, this has been a really, really illuminating and high value conversation, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. Only to say also that I think that what you're doing is an incredibly tough job, done so far as well as anyone could have done it, and 6 feels like an honest but something to be proud of and built on. So very, very best of luck, and I will be marketing the hell out of this, because I think it's situations like this that we all face, whether it's acquisition or something else. I just think acquisition of the sort that you've been through is probably about as tough a situation as any of them. So very best of luck, and thank you for spending the time with my audience.
Thank you. And what I appreciate all of that. One thing I just want to end on, though, because it's always important to end on a positive note for marketing purposes, right? Yeah, there's difficulties. Yeah, there's the unknown. this situation has put me personally and exposed me to things I would never have had otherwise. And so you can choose to focus on, yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, you did this well. You saw, how could anyone go through that? But you can also focus on, you literally would not have had this opportunity if those things hadn't happened.
Yeah. And it's probably made all of you far better business people and marketers.
I think so. And certainly for me personally, a lot of life lessons, which is, what more could you ask for?
Good for you, Greg. Let's speak again soon.
I'd love to, Mark. Appreciated this.
Take care. Bye.